Hello and welcome or welcome back. This is the third in a series of BBA hosted webinars via Furturebuild. Thank you so much. Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining me. Delighted to be here. My name is Peter Sumpton. I'm a marketing consultant working within the construction industry. We've got a really interesting chat lined up for this next hour, so I want to get right into that as quickly as possible. The way it'll work today is that I'll do a brief intro to our amazing guests. I'll introduce the BBA, bit of a background to who they are, and then we'll get straight into today's topic, which is building of the future. Like I say, I'm your host, and I'm delighted to be joined by, first of all, Gabriela Madero. Gabriela is a professor of geotechnical and geoenvironmental engineering at Heriot-Watt University and co-founder of Kenotech. Kenotech is positioned as a clean tech company, focusing on sustainability and the environmental impact of the construction industry, with their first product being an unfired brick with 90% recycled content from construction waste called K-Brick. If you haven't heard of it before or you haven't seen it, go and check it out and do some reading. It's really cool and really interesting. So, Gabriela, welcome. Okay, Gabrielle is with us. She's on mute, but that's okay. It's all good. And number two on our amazing lineup is Trudy Sully. Trudy is the impact lead for Mott MacDonald and has a specific focus on supporting the development and integration of DFMA, Design for Manufacture and Assembly, and MMC, Modern Methods of Construction, approaches to improve efficiency, productivity, and performance. Trudy was part of the Construction Innovation Hub, working closely with the UK government departments and industry partners in developing the tools and approaches needed to enable transformation in how our built environment is delivered. And finally, last but by no means least, our third guest for today, Eva Magnus Ali. Eva is the founder of Dataform Lab, a startup aiming to disrupt and transform through the integration of automation in off-site construction. The company is making an impact through digital innovation by demystifying industrial robotics and by developing design to fabrication digital workflows, as well as de-risking technology innovation and investment in automation in construction. Previously, Eva has worked on developing a framework for robotics and automated construction, or FRAC for short. Eva, Trudy, Gabriela, thank you so much for joining me. Absolute pleasure to host you today. Okay, right. So, bit about the BBA, and then we'll get straight into it. First of all, BBA hosts a number of webinars, not just through Furturebuild, but we're delighted that Furturebuild has allowed us to do this one today. You can look at the webinars on the BBA website, and you can subscribe through the mailing list. There was a little video there, but I know that's not going to work because this is a PDF. That link won't work, but if you go onto the BBA website, scroll down to the bottom, there's a newsletter subscription there. And if you join, it will tell you everything you need to know. We'll send all webinars and future events to your inbox. Promise we won't spam you. Okay, so who are the BBA? Well, the BBA have been around for about 56, 57 years now, and they help within construction and manufacturing to build confidence in solutions, innovations, designs, creations, and the implementation of those throughout the whole supply chain. They look to develop long-term partnerships with clients and associations, but not just growth within the UK, but globally as well. It's important to note they will always remain reassuringly impartial. That is part of their mantra, and they wholeheartedly believe and agree in that. They're actually a for-profit organization, though, but limited by guarantee, which means they look to reinvest to the industry or for the industry as a whole in everything they do, which is just a fantastic thing to do. So what do they actually do? Well, they're more commonly known for PAC, product approval certification. And you might have heard of the BBA agreement certification, and that's kind of what they're more commonly known for. But they also do reproduction certification, HAPAS, which is a certification within the highways industry. And some services and products that you might not know they do are testing, audit and inspection, management systems such as ISO 9001, and more previously UKCA marking, which comes into its existence at the end of this year. To date, they've issued over 6,000 certificates, and on an annual basis, they inspect and assess over 8,000 manufacturing plants, companies, organizations. Big numbers, big figures. That's enough about the BBA. What we're going to do now is we're going to move on to our topic for today, which is building of the future. And what we're going to cover, or what our amazing guests are going to cover, is the current state of the UK building stock, challenges with current building methods, challenges in the way we actually build, drivers for change, building for the future and predictions of what that might look like, and also the challenges that we face moving into the future. And then we'll hopefully, if we have time, move on to some Q&As. If you want to ask a question, please do so. We'll get to those questions at the end of this webinar if we have time. If we don't, I'll collate them all and get back to people individually where we can. You can post a question on the bottom right of your screen. I think there should be a questions tab. Click on that, put your question in, and people can vote for their favorite questions, and whatever's at the top, we'll try and answer. Some people joining us, Anthony from Cardiff, Lisa says good afternoon, the Shane, Brian, Eleanor, you're all welcome. And yeah, let's kick this off, shall we? I'm going to go to Trudy first to answer this first question, or lead in answering this first question, should I say. So the first topic we're going to cover is in terms of buildings that currently make up both commercial and residential properties in the UK. What state is our current building stock in when comparing it to other countries? So I'm looking just to set the scene right here.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for the introduction and the invitation, Peter. So I'm going to contradict you almost straight away. It's really difficult to compare us with the rest of the world for a whole range of reasons. But you know that if you look at different demands in different parts of the world, we have different economic, social, environmental factors that influence how we live, where we work, and what infrastructure we need. What we do know, though, from a lot of research that has been done is that globally we are faced with a significant proportion of common challenges in terms of delivering our future environment. So rather than looking at how we compare in terms of what we have, it's about the challenges we have and what we need to do to deliver our needs for the future. And obviously we're going into that in a lot more depth. As part of the Construction Innovation Hub program, we did look around the world and we did look at research that had been conducted by consultants, by the World Economic Forum, by thought leaders in the market. And we used that as a basis for the work that we did. And we'll come back to that a bit later, perhaps. But I think what's really important is to recognise it's not all doom and gloom. In fact, in the UK, we're in the upper quartile in terms of productivity, though that is still one of our big challenge areas that we do need to address. What we actually did really well through COVID, and you know, for all of the horror show that we all went through around the whole world, it changed the way we looked at our needs and how we need to meet them. And that's actually been a really positive driver. But in terms of some of those challenges, I'm actually going to do a really blatant bit of copying here, because I've just spent 2 days at the Offsite Expo, which was absolutely buzzing. It was a really exciting place to be. There's so much innovation there, so much positivity about what can be achieved, but with recognition of the challenges that we have to face in our current society. And Elle George, who's somebody I've known for a few years, she's a consultant for a company called Elevate. And she was talking about the refurbishment demands that we have. So we've been talking a lot over the recent years about what we need to do in terms of new build and how we need to deliver it, and we're going to cover that. But actually refurbishment is a topic that is rising up the list of priorities. And when we look at our demands for net zero by 2050, as has been committed to in this country, just refurbishing of housing stock alone, we have 27 million homes that would need to be refurbished by 2050 to actually have a chance of meeting some of those emissions targets, because the built environment is such a significant factor there. That means we'd have to refit or retrofit 1.9 properties every minute from now to 2050. It's not happening at anything like that rate. We can't possibly even imagine getting to that rate at the current status. So those are your drivers, and it's not just in retrofit, that's huge. We also have a £650 billion pipeline of infrastructure that we know we need to deliver in the next 10 years. We know we need 300,000 new houses a year. We know we need 400 schools a year. There's a program to deliver 40 hospitals by 2030. Our demands are high, our needs are changing, and what we do now to meet those demands is critical. So hopefully that sets the scene, if not necessarily comparing us to the rest of the world.
Yeah, fantastic. That's a really good way to start and really set the scene for us. Eva, in terms of our current building stock, how do you see the state of our buildings in the UK at the moment?
I completely agree with Trudy, and thanks for the introduction and the invitation, Peter. It is important to understand all the parameters that are in place. As Trudy said, it's not like a simple thing to do. It's quite complex to understand how each country deals with the building stock. It is important, though, to point out that we need to focus on improving the way whatever is being retrofitted or like new builds are built, the quality of these buildings, because with the very slow rate of renewing that stock, we have to make buildings that are of really good quality, because they will stay there for at least 100 years. And according to the latest BRE report, it's not just about the quality of the buildings and the quality of living in those buildings. It's a really big cost for the UK and like the poor housing. It's about 20 billion per year in NHS cost. It really affects people's lives. So we cannot afford to keep building in poor quality. We have to think of the lifespan of those buildings.
Yeah, and I think that's an important, massively important point. It's easy just to focus on the building rather than its inhabitants, and how poor building stock and poor quality building for the future affects the whole society and not just the buildings themselves. Gabriella, have you got anything to add in terms of our current building stock here in the UK?
First of all, thank you for the invite to be here. Thank you for the nice introduction. It's a pleasure to be with Trudy and Eva today here talking about this so important aspect. Great to see also female staying here for talking about this topic in construction is quite unusual. One thing that, first of all, very good points Trudy and Eva had highlighted, and I would like to add on that, because one thing that worries me and my concern is growing in this area is in terms of imports. And I'm going to concentrate here, if I give you an example of the brick, that is a lot of what I look, the brick market. Last year, we have used 2.6 billion bricks in the UK. And from these 2.6 billion bricks, over 600 million bricks were imported. And one point that Trudy was saying, that we have the net zero targets. We have to meet the net zero targets. How can we meet net zero targets when we are moving, you have the logistic of these very heavy, bulky materials to be moved from places very far from the UK, the Netherlands, Spain, well, before the war, even from Ukraine, we're bringing lots of bricks from there. So we need to, I think the challenge here is that to meet the targets, because whatever the way we're doing, and we need to have, as Eva pointed out, better quality buildings that are going to last longer. And when we say better quality, we need to also consider in terms of insulation. We want to have less problems of temperature variation, have better conservation of temperature. With that, also reduce the impact of the operational carbon, not only the embodied carbon. So there are different aspects here, but we still have a market that relies a lot from external imports, and this is something that it can be a problem, and it's a growing problem. And so together with that, I think we have many challenges. There are ways for us to look forward, but the challenges are big, and the action needs to start now of how can we change this pattern, because we're not going in the right direction.
Excellent, fantastic. I'm going to move the conversation on ever so slightly from the current building stock to actually how we build our let's just call them houses or buildings. I'm going to stick to saying buildings by the end of this, I'm pretty sure. Just a few shout outs here. So we've got Graham joining us from Krakow, and Mohammed from Malaysia, which is pretty cool. Trudy L says thanks for the shout out. L George, if I said that right, thanks for the shout out. So nice work, everybody. Okay, so moving on.
Where it's due, Peter.
Sorry?
Credit given where it's due.
Absolutely, as always, 100%. Okay, Gabriella, I'm just going to stick with you and move on to the second topic, if you like. And I think most people would say that the construction industry is quite traditional in its approach to building, or it very much can be. Many methods haven't changed much since they were first used. What are the challenges we face with our current building methods?
I think there is a number of challenges. One direct challenge that I see, and I think is a growing one, is the shortage of skilled workers. Because we have very traditional ways of constructing. As you say, it is a traditional sector. We know changes take time to be adopted in construction, and we have been using old traditional methods for many years, and many of them work. We need to understand if they are sustainable moving forward. We can continue with these methodologies, but it's clear that we have a shortage of skilled workers, not only a shortage in materials, and but is also in skilled work. And then there are the indirect, I would say, challenge that is linked to that, and I'm gonna be here pushing this flag as much as I can, because something very close to my heart is how sustainable current practice are. Are we questioning ourselves enough? Are we questioning the process? And together with that, it comes the question is, what needs to be changed for us to deliver the net zero targets and to be more resource efficient and to be more carbon efficient? Is all these different aspects that is not only more and more we know that we need to have circular approaches in place, because if we think in terms of the way we build in a way that is very materials intense. We exploit a lot of raw materials. How sustainable is this long term? And I'm not just thinking, is not thinking for generations to come, I'm thinking for us. How sustainable is this for the next decade? The rate that we are just exploiting, taking raw materials. That's why it's essential that I think the moving forward, we need to see in construction, in the methodologies, in the techniques that we use, more circular approaches being embedded in different stages of construction. And I think part of that, one thing that I think is essential, and that is the point, that can we be considering how can we be more sustainable from the design stage, from selection of material, from moving materials, from the selection of where the logistics of moving these materials, and then the construction practice that is then the methodology that you ask. So I think the whole chain needs to be reassessed, and we need to come with more sustainable practice. There is no one answer for all. Construction infrastructure is all different, but that's why it's essential moving forward that we collaborate, we join forces, because it's the only way that the construction sector is going to be able to deliver the ambitious targets of net zero by 2050 of the government, but more than that, to be able to support the built environment is known to be, responsible for over 39% of the carbon emissions. So we have a big role here in changing things. Otherwise, the future is not going to be bright.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the question is bigger than just the methods we use to build, because the methods will be determined by the products that we use and also the skilled workforce that we have. And like you said, it's the combination of these things. Trudy, I'd just like to get your thoughts on this. You know, you do work with design for manufacturing assembly and MMC. So what are your thoughts about the skills, the shortages, the way we actually build buildings today? Oh, you're on mute, Trudy. It was going to happen.
Somebody had to do it. I just got it out of the way for everybody. Yeah, a lot of the challenges that we faced, as Gabriella mentioned, that they've been well explored and well documented, but not necessarily well addressed yet. The skills shortage, the aging demographic, is a real challenge in terms of how we actually are physically able to deliver it. And I'm sure Eva will talk more about opportunities for addressing that through other methodologies. I think the challenge that I wanted to raise here, which is something that I've seen personally, and a lot of the work I've been involved with, is risk aversion. And actually, I'll take it further than that. It's not necessarily risk aversion; it's logic aversion, because we still see so much of that's not the way I've done it. That's not the way we do it here. Not invented here. These kind of reactions to change, and that's a natural thing, and it happens in all environments. But the demand and the necessity is there, and we have to have clients who are, if not willing to take risk, willing to challenge perceptions and willing to demand better to actually help drive the change. And that then gives the confidence to the market to respond in how they need to change their business models and address this. So the challenges aren't just about what we build and how we build and the skills and the methodologies. It's actually that significant cultural shift that we need to address as well, so that people do look to do things differently and better and improve quality, productivity, and performance.
Yeah, absolutely. Eva, I'd like to come to you just to finish off this topic. You know, you're founder of Data Form Lab. You know far more than most on robotics and automation in construction and those types of topics. So what are your thoughts on the current way we build our buildings and the skills that we have?
I completely agree with Trudy. The mindset is really important, and it is one of the main reasons why I founded Data Form Lab, to help the industry, to educate the industry on what automation technologies can offer, what they cannot do, because they also have limitations, but how the mindset about how we design and how we build needs to change. Because I also believe that one of the biggest challenges is that many people in the industry are quite afraid of taking risks, and that can lead into main reactions. One is not to do anything, continue business as usual. And that's probably the reason why we have the same construction processes in the past 100 years. Or the second reaction is to actually take new technologies and implement them in construction in an inefficient way. So when we see robots laying bricks, like it can lead to a small improvement in efficiencies. But if we are not critical about how innovation, new technologies, new workflows can really affect the way we design and think about the construction process, then we're not making big steps towards innovation. We're just replicating existing processes with others that are automated. But in my opinion, if we have an Android robot trying to place a plasterboard on site, the amount of obstacles that need to be overcome in order to make this robot even stand and hold this piece to put it in place is like loss of focus complete. A lot of energy is wasted, and we need to be critical. That's the biggest challenge for me. We need to think about what we have done so far and how we can improve it holistically as like a general concept of how we design and manufacture.
Fantastic, great way to finish that section. Just to reiterate, if you've got any questions in the audience, please use the question tab, because then people can vote on the most popular questions. I know there's a few coming in the chat section, so if you can just move those over to the question part, that'll be a lot easier to sift through those questions and ask them if we get time at the end. Okay, excellent. On to our third question then. Eva, I'm going to stick with you on this purely because your background and you're on a roll because you finished that last section. I want to move forward and actually look forward now. What changes are you seeing in the way we are build or we're starting to build? Are you seeing step changes that will subsequently produce better buildings? Or, and I think we alluded to it previously, can construction be a bit slow to the uptake? So what changes are we seeing in the way we build?
So I think there are positive changes, and also there are many initiatives, especially from the UK government, that are favoring a shift in mentality and like pushing towards the integration of modern methods of construction in the industry. I think the main changes are like digital innovation happening like within bigger companies, but also from many startups, linking design to manufacturing. So having seamless workflows where the industry can collaborate, can exchange data, have data-driven approaches, so that we challenge the fragmentation that is present at the moment. Also, I think there is a positive approach towards the uptake of MMC. I think it is really important to keep in mind that modern methods of construction are not that modern. They have revolutionized other industries. We need to learn from other industries. And personally, I see a positive attitude towards that. I was also in the Offsite Expo, as Trudy mentioned. It was really interesting to see how many manufacturers are looking into MMC and automation solutions. And this is also a positive step. The attitude of trying to learn about automation technologies and how to improve off-site manufacturing, because at the moment we see many factories like working off-site, but everything is happening manually in the factories, which is a normal transition if you want. There's never been like a huge leap throughout history. But I believe the biggest challenge and why the adoption of new technologies is moving quite slow is nothing else than fear of automation. And this is something that we have identified at Dataform Lab, and we're trying to work very closely with offsite manufacturers and the wider industry, if you want, to de-risk the integration of automation technologies at the business level. Because I wouldn't blame anyone thinking that business as usual is best if they don't know an investment in automation technologies and MMC. How would they use it in the future? How many projects would they have in the pipeline to justify it? So we have, like we as Dataform Lab, but as an industry as a whole, we have to work together and understand that it's not just the trends that are important. Everything has to have a business base and a business perspective to it. So this is something that we are trying actively to work on and promote. But I think other than this fear of change and fear of automation technologies, the maturity of these technologies is at a quite good level. So they could be implemented. We have seen how they have revolutionized processes in other industries. So I believe that we are at a tipping point to change the way we build in the construction industry.
Okay, so there is a tipping point coming. Gabriella, I'd like to come to you next, simply because what Eva was saying there is how we build and the processes, and there's lots of efficiencies that we can gain from changing those things and not doing it the same way we've always done it. And I will come on to Trudy to look at MMC and other ways of building. But from your perspective, Gabriella, you're fully entrenched in sustainability, in reducing waste, in using that waste to create new products. Are you seeing a change in the way we build or the way we manufacture? What are your thoughts?
So I would say I have to agree with Eva the point that there is a fear of adopting new technologies for sure, but I see a growing community in construction, let's say, that is ready to take that. And I'm glad to see that, and is looking ways more broadly than that. And people are questioning from adoption of materials, how can I reduce embodied carbon? How can I be more circular? How I can be using a material that is more conscious in terms of its make and is more resource efficient and have circular approach in the making. So I think it's so big, the question, and we think, if you think the construction sector in the UK produce over 100 million tons of waste, that is over a third of the UK the total waste per year. This is a lot as an industry. So we need to think even, because if we're producing so much waste, is something in the process of doing things. It's not right. Do we need more automation? Do we need to have more waste management as part of the process of our design and consideration of, and we'll produce so much waste, still we're gonna have large quantities. There is a lot of demolition still happening. Do we need to take in consideration that lots of these materials are precious materials that could be reused? So to me, it's a mind shift, and it's interesting because Trudy in the previous answer touch that is so much this cultural change, the mindset, and things in construction. I've been working 25 years in this area. It takes very long to be really adopted, incorporated, and seeing large volumes, adoption of methodology, materials, what it is. What I'm very hopeful is that there is this growing group that is really ready and is trying to push and wants to do the right thing and to look for what are the options and how can we be more sustainable in our approach. So I think it's very broad. I think we need to really get to the point that we really have impact. We need somehow to have a change in policy, and that is gonna be incentivize companies, contractors, designers to adopt more sustainable, more resource efficient, and this is gonna come absolutely with automation, We're going to come with consideration of different materials. We're going to come with design of management systems for the waste, for the logistic within the site, reducing movement, because we will need to count with each of these items to get a better future ahead of us that is more take into consideration what we use in terms of materials, and is more resource efficient. Is dangerous the amount of the volumes that we're exploiting. Is a question of decades that we're not going to see sun to be taken out. We're going to have problem with taking gravel, and it takes millions of years for these materials to be produced. So how can we today do something that is going to protect us in the future? I'm going to stop because this is something that I will get too enthusiastic. I can go on and on because it's so important. We need that. I'm hopeful
you can tell
that we're in the right direction.
No, that's it's great to see your enthusiasm, and it's much needed and much warranted in this respect. Trudy, I'm interested to get your thoughts on this and the way we build in terms of you're an impact lead from McDonald, and the work you're doing and what you're currently facilitating at the moment. This must be high on the agenda of your daily life, the changes we're seeing in the way we build, or aren't there any changes?
I nearly did it again, just couldn't.
It's okay.
Yeah.
You're the muter of the group. It's fine.
It's because I've been live for the last 2 days, you see, and all of a sudden I have to turn the on-off switch more often. But
it's all good.
Yeah, this is very much my daily life. You know, it is about change and supporting change and impact in what we do as part of that change, and hence the title. And that was sort of the front end of my previous role as well. And are we too slow in the change? Well, yes, because it is frustrating, because those of us that are sort of embedded in this environment really want to drive things ahead. And that's, you know, there's a hardcore of champions doing this now, which is so positive and it's so good to see. And we have the backing. This is the critical point. We've got government policy and we have industry leaders from this Construction Leadership Council and across industry bodies and forums that are all at the forefront of these conversations. But it's a very big shift to make. And there are, like in many environments, people focusing on the day-to-day and struggling to get the capacity to think about the future. So a lot of the activity that's been done between government, the Construction Innovation Hub, and the industry partners has been about trying to facilitate the mechanisms and develop the opportunities for people to be able to make these transitional changes and the step changes and huge innovations in a way that de-risks it for them, but also brings some commonality of approach. And for anybody that's having a day of the online, some people might have attended this morning the launch of the product platform Rulebook, which is, you know, born out of necessity for looking at the guidance to help organizations to look at how they can recognize where a product platform approach to delivering our built environment is the right solution, how to develop the platforms themselves, how to deploy them, but only in the face of an aggregated demand from our client side. So these are the tools, and it's available to download now. These are the tools which are being developed to support the industry in that change. What we have to do is manage expectations as well. And as much as we are really wanting to drive change, other industries took decades to go through their evolutionary changes. We are hopefully a bit slow to start, but ramping up and moving quickly. And the opportunity and the demand is there. So I'm seeing a lot of very positive signs in that respect.
Just picking up on that final point you just made there Trudy, in terms of other industries and slow to change. I think construction it's got to be like that. If you look at certain industries that have been impacted by new innovations or digital, or the advancement of smartphones and things like that, such as taxis and getting from A to B in certain places. That was almost an overnight thing where, boom, something came on the market and completely changed the industry. But that's a very singular industry. You get from A to B, and that's pretty much it. Whereas construction is so vast that I don't think there is that one thing that that everyone conforms to that will change magically overnight, which leads us nicely onto the next topic. And Trudy, I'll stick with you if you don't mind, and that's moving on to drivers for change. I think you mentioned one of them just then, with the product playbook. I think you said, and if you do have a link, Trudy, after you've answered this, please put it in the chat so everybody can link to it and download it. But what factors do you think will determine how we need to build in the future? So what drivers are going to affect us so much, and what factors are going to have this impact that we'll just have to change?
Yeah. So I'm going to go back to sort of that carrot and stick scenario, and you know, it is we're in a position where we do have both. We've got the social, economic, and environmental demands, and they're not just drivers anymore. They are necessity. They are demands. We have to address those challenges, and we do have and have had a consistent support from government and cross-party support, which is also a novel thing sometimes these days. But we've got a lot of backing to be able to do this. So we have a range of policies and guidance books which have come from government, which are enabling the environment for change, from transforming infrastructure performance, even as far back as Construction 2025, which came out in 2013. The playbook, so that's not what I was referring to, but a refresh of that has just come out as well. And that is a very significant enabling mechanism for the client departments to respond to. What I was mentioning earlier, and yes, I will put a link, is the product platform Rulebook, which is a series of rules and principles about how to develop these approaches, which the government are asking for. So that £650 billion pipeline I mentioned there's a very significant proportion of that which can be delivered using a platform approach, and that is what the IPA are asking for. And that is potentially going to be mandated in the next 2 years. That's part of the Transforming Infrastructure Performance Roadmap actions. So all of these things are coming together, and it isn't by accident. It is because of the collaboration and the way that people have been working together to actually respond to these demands and drivers. The carrot side of it is that there's just huge opportunity to become more efficient, more effective, more productive, and more profitable. And we know that that is a really challenged environment at the moment. With the resources and materials side, the industry has to find ways to be and continue to maintain viability. And what we are doing within Mott MacDonald is looking at what we need to do in the future to be viable in that marketplace and fulfill the needs of society. And this is across the board. You know, a lot of companies now, the tipping point was a really big topic across the conference season last year. And this year, it's you know, we're hopefully going over in the good way to the point where we're now really challenging each other about how we actually do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Loads to take away from that. I'm just going to move on to Gabriella, I think. Gabriella, drivers for change. What factors are we seeing that will drive the way we build in the future?
It's interesting. I agree with Trudy, and I think there is a lot there. And I think, and it's good to see there is policy in place. I still think it's not enough in terms of it's not implemented, and there is not enough incentives or ways of getting this force to be implemented. So, but I think it will happen because there is demand. We need to adapt to the different circumstances. I think there is one aspect that I think that there will be a driver for change that needs to be is the sustainable aspect of it. And I'm going to insist on that because what we're doing today is not going to work, is not working, and is not going to work. So we need to be considering embodying operational carbon in projects seriously. And I think everyone is trying their best, but it needs to be even more. There is amazing projects and examples that are going, and they're going to be showcasing it's possible to do. There are alternatives, and it's nice to see like the Furturebuild and all this, what is happening out there, that there are materials and there are things that are low in body carbon and there are waste. But I think this is then the sustainability, and to become more conscious in terms of what is the embodied and operational carbon is going to be a driver for change. Together with that, more and more, I see in research this getting in the agenda is for construction to become more resource efficient and to be more consideration in our raw materials that we have been exploiting in crazy volumes, that this is not sustainable. At the same time, largest sector producing waste. So this is a dangerous imbalance here. So we need to have more circular approaches and become more resource efficient. Another thing that to me for some time, I've been pushing this is the well-being of users. I think is going to be a drivers for change. We had COVID and we realized that lots of buildings were not prepared for it. And because construction was not taken into consideration, we have our materials, our system, our methodologies passing all the building standards, but building standards are not considering the well-being of users of today. So I think this is going to be also drivers for change. We're going to need to look at that. The reality has changed. We had a pandemic that we still are dealing with that, and there's still other things to come. So we need to be prepared and we need to be ahead. And with the energy crisis, I think there is one driver that is going to be for change is also we need to consider when we're building, do we need to be more conscious of our materials and the demand of energy that our buildings are requiring. So how can we be more conscious of that? And I think it is happening. We have the crisis here, and we need to be moving forward, changing the way we're doing things, and to become also more conscious and help the society, because it's helping people to not to have so much variation of temperature in their homes. So do we need more insulation in our new homes? How can we get that? Or we need to opt for materials that have better insulation properties and we're going to have less variation. So we need to consider all of this, but together we need to have this thinking of well-being. We need at the same time breathable buildings. We need to have this variation and this control of humidity, air changing because of it's essential. We know we have seen with COVID what can happen. So there are a number of aspects, and I think all of them are going to be, and we're going to be seeing them as drivers for change.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many various components, isn't there, in these factors and drivers going forward in the future? And are we building for the people that are going to be the consumers and eventually live in those houses and use buildings for commercial use, or are we looking far more at our revenue and the pricing and how we can get it cheaper and building faster and quicker? Loads of things to consider. Eva, I just want to come to you to wrap this one up in terms of factors for change. You know, you're all about disruption and transformation, so you're the factor for pushing through change or trying to push through change, which is fantastic. But what other drivers are going to move our industry and buildings forward for future use?
I think sustainability and the energy crisis is a very big driver for change, as Gabriela said. And I believe that this is also pushing the emergence of different solutions. It is important to see the construction industry as a whole and understand that the supply chain, the raw material prices, the logistics that are involved are really part of each building. and consider them to be that. So I believe that the net zero targets that have been placed, in order to be met and in order to avoid a worse energy crisis than the one we are in right now, we have to change the way we perceive what is construction. So it's not just the process of building something either on-site or off-site and then assembling it. It's considering the overall life of the materials, their journey to becoming a building, and then maintenance and decommission sometimes. So I believe bringing together all the disciplines in the industry and creating a closer collaboration framework is going to be key. And also looking into the new ways of building and the introduction of MMC. It is important to keep in mind that there are other aspects that need to be addressed very early on, such as the legal aspects. How do we create new legal frameworks that are evolving as the way we build evolves? And also the new business models for construction. We cannot operate with the same business models using new tools, new technologies, creating new relationships between the parties. So it's important to look into those matters at a very early stage.
Okay, interesting. We've got about 10 minutes left. We've got an absolute bucket load of questions and some really, really interesting comments and chats going on. Trudy, thanks for putting that product platform rulebook link in the chat. If you haven't noticed that, just scroll up a little bit and it'll be there. There's loads going on in the conversation with Nigel and Graham, Ron, and loads of people asking questions. So I know we're not going to get around to all the questions. So what I'll do is, if we can whiz through these two answers, I'd like to get to a couple of questions, and those we don't answer, we'll try and answer after the fact if we've got people's email addresses or we can contact them. So apologies if we don't get round to that. So Eva, I'm going to stick with you on this. And this question is kind of born out of an email we got when we posed the bigger question, are we building for the future? And the answer we got back was, no, we're not. We're building for the present. And then this was all in caps. They put, whereas we should be adapting building materials for the ever-changing climate and atmospheric conditions. So someone was very passionate about that. Apologies that I haven't got the name of that person that sent that. So with that in mind, what are your predictions for how buildings will differ from those we're inhabiting today?
So I think sustainability and carbon emissions and like carbon footprint is going to be in the center of the way we will build in the future. And we have already started building like that. But I believe there's going to be a bigger data richness. So the buildings that we will build in the future will have passports, the materials will have passports. We will know what is built, how was it built. All that information will not get lost. So we see many data-driven design approaches, many data-driven manufacturing approaches. So there is no reason why the whole workflow will not be seamless in the future. It's already happening. We see it in our projects. Again, in terms of sustainability, I believe that there's going to be more transparency. There are plenty of solutions looking into this matter. More transparency about the logistics and the supply chain relationships that follow the buildings. Normally, this question always comes with the expectation for someone to say that the buildings of the future are going to look different. And just to address that, I think that eventually new aesthetic expressions will emerge. Like personally, having an architecture engineering background, I've been discussing this a lot the past few years. But I think, first of all, we need to understand that design-wise, standardization doesn't mean a copy-paste. And what we are looking into through MMC and automation technologies is to standardize the design process, the design rules, and the manufacturing process. So I believe that the adoption of automation technologies and automation workflows, both in design and manufacturing, will allow the mass customization of buildings up to a certain degree. But I think as we embrace more these new ways of designing and new ways of building, we will see eventually also an aesthetic change, because it has been shown throughout history that whenever a new technology or a new material comes in, there is a transition period. And I'll give the example of when people stopped building with stone and started building more with steel. The first expressions of architecture and geometry that we saw were steel arches, because that's what was feasible with stones for openings. But then technology evolved, the approach evolved, the design aesthetics evolved. So I think having new tools and new technologies eventually will also change the way buildings look. But at like the very close future, I think data richness and transparency is the first milestone. So
it's always the way, isn't it, with any industry? We always see this far-fetched, what's the next year got installed, 10 years got installed, and it's these bold predictions where everything will completely change within 10 years, and it's very rarely that. It's more far-fetched, and in reality it's not that far from the fact of today, really. So Gabriella, how do you see, or what are your predictions for how buildings will differ in the future to what we inhabit today?
It's a nice question. I enjoy actually to think about it and to hope for the best. But I see the things moving forward in terms of research and what is being developed, innovation, and how is the aligned with legislation and policy, and how things are moving forward. More and more, we're going to be using materials in our construction that comes with that are developed with a from recycled material with a circular approach, and is very aligned with what Eva said in terms of having materials who have a passport, and having this will have the data. And moving forward is to have materials that, and I was reading quickly the chat at the same time trying to listen things here, is the capability of having an understanding of what is on site, that if we need to deconstruct, we can deconstruct and reuse that materials in a clever and sustainable way. More that in some sites that we cannot deconstruct, and we're going to reuse that material to be used as feedstock in a circular approach to make new materials. This is the concept of the K-brick that I have developed, that is, well, you said in the beginning, is a brick made of construction demolition waste, and is the whole concept that if we build a house with K-brick and 50 years from now is out of fashion, that design, or whatever is the reason, we can put that down, recycle that material, and use that same material as feedstock for new building materials to go back to site. So I think more and more we're going to have circular approaches that are going to, so the future is showing to add value for our natural resource and reuse them in a circular approach as many times as possible. We have all these different inert materials, gravel, sand, that are precious, gypsum from plasterboard, and more research is looking even how we can reuse clay too. That is another important material. So I think the future is going to see added value route for our natural resource materials. So we're going to be less resource intense in manufacturing. At the same time, sustainability is going to be at the heart of any design, and we're going to be considering there what is the embodied carbon, what's the operational carbon, what is happening there, then that it comes also with the selection of materials, and is all this, it needs to be. In terms of the design, I have my civil engineering hat here. Architects, designer, they always surprise me, and I think with having this flexibility, and this is something that is nice, is with materials that are developed and reused, that to give us the flexibility for the design to adapt to the needs and the reality that is needed. And one thing that I was reading also from the chat quickly there, to have materials that have better insulation on its own material, not just thinking in terms of adding insulation, to start building with materials that can improve actually the thermal variation, reduce this thermal variation in a building with the material itself. Of course, we're going to have cavity, we have insulation, but to increase even more, maybe we need to be changing that to be responding to the energy crisis, to be responding, because we read the news, it's going to be a difficult winter. It's going to be hard. We're preparing public spaces to receive people during the day, because it's going to be difficult for people to keep the heating on. Should we be thinking, actually, I think the building of the future should consider that. This should be part of the design and the considerations. We're building for people. So what are the needs of the people need to be in the future of design, and the well-being of them, considering all the different aspects that we need, not only in terms of temperature in the homes and what is there, but is also the well-being for any pandemic and what is needed in terms of the quality of life. So all these different aspects, I think it is in the future, and I think we're going that direction, but there are some big steps ahead of us to get there.
Sure, absolutely. So building for its inhabitants, massively important, I would say. Always think of the end user and your consumer. Trudy, just final thoughts on how buildings will or may differ from what we inhabit today. Have you got any predictions?
I think materials development is going on all the time. And if you go to, I think it's at UK Construction Week, which is on in a couple of weeks, they always have a materials development section, which is like a sensory experience. And it's always really exciting to see what's coming out. Just conscious of time, I'm just going to refer people to the hype curve for construction. So Gartner do hype curves for different industries and technologies, and there's one for construction. And it's quite interesting to dip into that now and again and see what's really just way up there on the hype curve, like everybody's talking about it, but practicality of it's something else, as opposed to what's in the trough of disillusionment, which is just one of my favorite terms, in terms of it's not hyped anymore, and it's either going to fail or it will continue to thrive. And that's where we'll start to see those sort of changes coming through based on demand. The only other thing I'm going to say is all of these things we're talking about, DFMA, MMC, automation, robotics, materials, sustainability, net zero carbon emissions, circular economy, none of it is mutually exclusive. All of these things should be happening together. And the whole reason for changing what we're doing in the built environment is to make better quality buildings which enhance our environment and our experience. So all of these things do need to happen in a holistic manner.
Excellent. Nicely summarized there. So final question. I know we've run out of time. We've just got a few minutes. So I just want to cover this, but maybe just in a sentence or the main thing that you feel answers this. And this is the challenges the construction industry are currently and will face in the future. What do you think the main challenges for construction, for building buildings that are fit for future inhabitant, if you like? So I'm just looking for that number one main challenge that we need to fix. And I'm going to come to Gabriella first for that.
I think, Peter, we have spoken enough for you to know what is my...
Yeah. I've got to ask.
But it needs to be the sustainability. It's hard, and it needs to be focused on that, and that it goes, for me, two main things. We need to think in terms of embodied carbons, and that it comes linked to that. resource efficient. We need to be very aware of what we're selecting, where it's coming from, what is the process there, because we need to have, if we're gonna move, that's the way. We have the net zero targets, we need to do that and to become more resource efficient. And I'm keeping an eye on the chat there, and one point there that is coming, the net zero is linked to become more resource efficient, and all this, it's linked to the climate emergency that we have there, because if we think that we continue exploiting sand and remove clay, whatever, this natural resource, and we remove, and there are so many cases and companies in the UK that they've been producing materials, bricks, and have been exploiting an area and finish with the clay pit in an area, all the clay is removed. Suddenly in that area, we start seeing flooding. Suddenly in that area, we have more erosion. So we are directly contributing to the change in climate when we are interfering so much with the environment, with Earth. So we need to change that. To me, this must be the priority, because it's direct link, and because of the volumes that we use in construction, the impact is huge. And all the time. But
I know. Eva, I'm going to come to you next in terms of the main challenge that we are facing, or we're going to face in building buildings that are fit for the future.
So I think I agree with Gabriella that sustainability is extremely important, and there are other aspects that are like huge challenges, like users' well-being, like the energy that the construction industry consumes. But I think one of the first challenges that we might need to address is a mentality shift that is needed. So the fear of change, the fear of doing things differently, and also the industry fragmentation. We need to collaborate more, and we need to have interdisciplinary collaboration and approach to meet these challenges as a team, as a group. And it all has to start from education, which is really important, bringing the new generations, like letting them know what the issues are, not having them face them first day at work when they join the industry, and finding ways of working together and demystifying what technology can do for the industry.
Fantastic. Yeah, absolutely. Collaboration. I think that's the key to all this. Trudy, might have stolen your thunder there, but I'm fully behind what Gabriella was saying, and Eva, in terms of challenges we are facing or going to face. What's your main challenge that you feel we're going to face?
Well, fortunately, there's multiple storms to choose from to bring that thunder, so we're all right. So I'm going to say that to be able to do any of that or anything we've spoken about, we need a viable industry. And you know, there's a lot of comments in the comments and the questions about recession and cost and the challenges that we face, and we've talked about them. So we have to have an industry to be able to deliver our future infrastructure. And a lot of the processes, the changes that we're talking about, the lack of resources, the skills deficit, the demographic shift requires that we do it differently. And the difference is about the processes that we introduce. So to be able to introduce those processes, economies of scale fundamentally comes into the debate about the investment in that. And to have that investment, we must have a pipeline that is clear and long-term for industry to respond to. So I'm putting the onus back up at the top of the food chain in that respect. We know what we need. What we need is the investment and the backing from the clients to actually be able to have the clarity and the vision to be able to influence the change and deliver the future environment that will fulfill all of these challenges. So there you go. They just put it all back onto the client side. It's not just about that, but these things all have to come together. And that's where we come back to that holistic approach to be able to resolve the challenges.
Yeah, absolutely. Holistic approach. That's the main summary from me, really, in a lot of these talks and conversations that I'm having, is that it's that collaboration, it's that communication, it's that working together that is massively important. I don't think there's a simple answer to that because of what we were saying before, and the industry being so sporadic and so many different components and so many different variables in it. But it's nice to have that focus and know what we need to do, or nice to have that in the distance as a marker of where we want to get to in the future. Okay, we're way over by 10 minutes, so thank you everybody that stuck with us. I'm so sorry we've gone over. There's loads of questions and loads of interesting questions as well, and we just haven't got time to go through them. So I'm so sorry about that. What I'll try and do is collate all the answers, collate all the questions and get answers to them. So if we have got your contact details, we can get an answer to you. So it's not a futile exercise in putting your answer in, putting your question in that question box. Finally, from me, it's been an absolute pleasure to host these three tremendous and wonderful human beings. Yeah, I've got a lot of time for them. They're both fantastic in what they do, amazing in what they do. So check them out individually and look at the work they're doing and will do in the future, because you need to keep hot on their tails. It's been an absolute pleasure. So Trudy, thank you. Eva, thank you. Gabriella, thank you so much for your time today.
Pleasure.
Thank you very much, Peter. It's a pleasure.
Thank you all. Pleasure to be here.
Fantastic. This concludes the webinar. Thank you so much for everybody that's joined us and stuck to the end. Thank you so much for making it an interesting chat to try and read while we're talking. Loads of positive comments saying really interesting talk. Thanks, interesting debates. So once again, thank you for everybody that's joined. Thank you to the guests today. Thank you to Furturebuild and BBA for letting me host this, and hopefully we'll see you all in the future.